achieved.
Love him or hate him, you have to give some credit to Joseph Benavidez, and you have to sympathize a little bit. You look at his career, he's been so close, almost as close as any fighter can be to a title, maybe with the exception of Gray Maynard. But Benavidez has done it more often than Maynard without actually getting it. His first loss of his career came in 2009 against Dominic Cruz. He rematched Cruz in 2010 for the bantamweight title in the WEC, lost a split decision. All right, fast forward to 2012, he loses another split decision in the finals of the four-man UFC flyweight tournament, loses a split decision to Demetrius Johnson. That is 2 split decision title fight losses, but I'll do you one better. He advanced to the finals. Johnson was fighting Ian McCall. They had what was essentially a draw, but Ian McCall was really doing well, arguably won the fight. Some people could argue that. But even had they followed the rules correctly, there should have been an additional round, and Ian McCall very well could have won that fight based on what was going on in the third round. He was doing very well, and it would have been Ian McCall versus Benavidez for the flyweight title. And one fight later, Benavidez actually beats Ian McCall in what could have been a title fight had the rules been followed. So he's robbed there. Then fast forward to 2013, fights for the title again, gets knocked out by Johnson, gets knocked out by DJ. And then we go all the way up to 2016. He takes on Henry Cejudo, defeats him by controversial split decision, close fight. He loses next to Sergio Pettis. Henry Cejudo, a couple fights later, goes on to win the title. So again, he beat a champion just at the wrong time. Benavidez again puts another run together. Alex Perez, Dustin Ortiz, Jussier Formiga. They could have arguably, a Formiga-Benavidez fight would have been interesting. They could have put that together for a title fight, because Formiga's stature was pretty decent. But then he gets Figueiredo. He gets a headbutt and gets knocked out in the first fight, even though Figueiredo can't win the title, misses weight. And then what they do is they stick Figueiredo and Benavidez back together, and ultimately he loses, succumbs to the rear naked choke after getting hurt multiple times. And most likely, we've probably said this before, will never fight for a UFC title ever again. Tough luck for the guy. He did everything he could. He showed his toughness, but he just couldn't come up with it. Just kudos to Joseph Benavidez for everything he's accomplished and how far he's come, and just the hard luck he's gone through. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. Always, I'm your host, Scott Johnson. And on this episode of the show, we will be breaking down the upcoming July 26th event from Yas Island in Abu Dhabi, Fight Island, if you will. I'll be giving you the predictions for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 main card fights. A massive event. 15 fights in total, 8 on the prelims, 7 on the main card. It's just humongous. It should be a lot of fun. I'll be giving you all of my predictions for the main card fights on this episode of the show. All of my preliminary predictions, as per usual, will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. I'm coming off I did well the last event. I went 8-4. I was 8-2 going into the co-main event. Kelvin Gastelum, my top play of the night, gets tapped out and just crushes it. I had several other good upset picks, including Fazeev and Askar Askarov picking up nice wins along the way. It was just a good night overall. We cashed in significantly on both bet packs. They'll be for sale for $15 as well. And keep in mind, this will be my second last podcast ever. We're going to fall just short. I think this is podcast, 396 episodes. And again, as I said, I'm retiring from the podcast prediction podcast business for the next show, which is actually 10 years from my very first show. So hey, it's been a heck of a run, and we'll see how things play out. But you can follow me on at Twitter at KO_predictions. And we've got a hell of a lot of fights. I've been rambling a little bit more than I wanted to be. Let's get to our first main card prediction. Our first main card fight goes down in the UFC's welterweight division as Rhys McKee, 10-2-1, makes his debut against the 7-0 undefeated Khamzat Chimaev, this is a crazy fight. We just saw Chimaev, it'll be 10 days by the time we actually get to fight time. Looking at the odds, Chimaev, a massive minus 1,200 favorite. McKee, the turnaround, plus 700. And looking at this fight, Chimaev, and again, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, turning around in 10 days' notice. Actually, he'll have 10 days between fights, essentially, Wednesday to Saturday. He debuted at middleweight against John Phillips. He has a chance to set a record with 2 wins in the UFC in just 10 days. The quickest pair of wins at any point in time currently is resided by Chaz Skelly, who did it in 13 days. Now, for McKee, he's debuting, former Cage Warriors champion. He has won 3 in a row coming into this bout. Called up relatively on short notice to get into this matchup. Both men are tall. I've seen different things. Both seem to be in the 6'2", 6'3" range, which is big for welterweight. McKee is the younger fighter by a year. And you look at Chimaev, Chimaev, he won his debut at middleweight. Now he's asked for another fight. He essentially demanded it, and of course the UFC looks and goes, let's see if we can catch lightning in a bottle here. He got the fight, and he had to immediately start cutting back down. He is a natural welterweight. So he's immediately cutting this 15 pounds trying to get ready. And obviously, he felt confident he could do it in 10 days to get ready. Else, that's a big ask to turn around and come up short. So we'll see if there's any issues with him when he hits the scales. Now, when you look at the stat line from his first fight, 43 strikes landed, 1 strike given up, 2 takedowns, second round submission. He's finished all of his pro fights inside the first half of the fight. Midway through the second round, 4 wins by knockout, 3 wins by submission. The guy's an absolute mauler. Is this a smart thing? Is this a smart turnaround? It's a huge thing if he wins. 2 wins in 10 days, you really bump up your profile overall. You really get your name out there, puts himself on the map. But hey, let's remember, that debut opponent was tailor-made for him. Phillips, poor grappling game. That was his 6th career loss by submission. Fighters have had a lot of success taking him down, and he just got run over. So are we blowing this guy up too quickly? I don't know. We'll have to see. McKee, he's no slouch. 7 wins by knockout, 3 by submission, 6 finishes in the first round. Never been submitted. Worth noting, that could change on Saturday night. Probably hasn't faced a wrestler or grappler like he's about to face in the Dagestani opponent. He's pretty light on his feet. He's got a solid jab. Strikes fairly long. Really patient striker. He cuts off the cage and limits his opponent's room to move fairly effectively. He does a good job of piecing up his foe from range with a jab and those long strikes, but he needs time. He needs space, and that's where the problem lies. Not sure how he's going to fare under this type of pressure from a ground fighter of this nature. If he can time him and catch him coming in, he could do some serious damage. But, that remains to be seen. It's going to be a tough ask here. Chimaev, his awesome start absolutely disappears if he misses weight and puts together a flat performance. Even if he does miss weight, and puts together a good performance, he's probably okay. But if he comes out flat, gets knocked out, people look and go, oh, you bit off a little bit more than you can chew. These are the big leagues here. But I think this is a good opponent for him. I anticipate Khamzat's going to come out, take him down, control top position, bust him up, and work towards a submission finish. And my prediction is Khamzat Chimaev to defeat Rhys McKee by submission. Remaining in the UFC's welterweight division, a pair of more established roster members square off as the 21-8-1 Alex the Cowboy Oliveira takes on the 17-6 and 1 Peter Sobotta. Now, looking at this matchup quickly, the odds favor Oliveira at -170, Sobotta returning as a +140. Now, Oliveira took a split decision victory over Max Griffin last time out. He had lost 3 consecutive bouts to Nicolas Dalby, Platinum Perry, and of course Gunnar Nelson. Sobotta had a bit of a rebirth in his UFC career. He went 0-3 to start. He left the promotion, had a draw in his first fight, and then ripped off 7 consecutive wins, which included back-to-back fights in his return to the promotion, before losing to Kyle Noak, beating the aforementioned Nicolas Dalby and Ben Saunders, and then a TKO loss to Leon Edwards in the final second of a fight. He was probably losing, but still Leon Edwards is a pretty high-caliber fighter who could be contesting for the title not too far from now. Sobotta, 1 inch taller, Oliveira, 1 inch reach advantage, and a year younger for the Brazilian. Sobotta has been out of action for 28 months. Oliveira has not fought in just 4. Now, for Peter, he had success. His success when he returned was kind of a product of 2 notable improvements. His striking was a little more effective overall, a little more impactful, and more effective offensive wrestling. When you look at his fight against Dalby, 3 effective takedowns. He had 2 against Kennedy, 2 in another fight. He had a trio of takedowns as well. He's a submission threat on the ground. He's got a pretty solid top game. He likes to transition to the back, and he's got a number of rear naked chokes once in that position. So just overall, he looks good. In his UFC tenure, he's 3-1 when landing at least 2 takedowns. But on the flip side, 1-4 when he lands 1 or less. So that gives you an idea how reliant he is on the ground game. He's been knocked out twice, and he's actually 2-3 in decisions, which raises some questions about his longevity in more demanding fights. And one of the big issues, that, especially in the decisions, is he tends to be a little too inactive at times at range when he can't land takedowns. When he fought Nicolas Dalby, it was almost the perfect scenario. He dropped him with a shot and spent the entire first round on top of them. He utilized takedowns, neutralized his offense, and essentially Dalby was stuck on his back in each round that he got taken down in. When he fought Leon Edwards, it was the total opposite. He was dropped by Edwards. He did attack off his back, but he spent a lot of time on his back and just got stuck there. Didn't really have anything going on. In this matchup, I think he's going to need 2 to 4 takedowns and solid top control. And, there's scenarios with Peter Sobotta. He either lands takedowns and really limits his opponent's volume, which equates to a win. If he's stuck to striking only and just simply results in not enough volume and no finish, it equates to a loss, not surprisingly. Or if he gives up takedowns, his striking is simply too limited to catch up, and if he can't get a snap submission, he's going to head for a loss. Looking at Oliveira, he's at his best. He's kind of a power and pressure guy. He just wants to get in there and brawl and mix it up. He'll eat strikes. He can do a lot of damage. He'll take some damage. It can catch up to him, but also he can just wear guys out by simply taking what they throw and throwing more back at them. He likes to clinch and bully his opponents around. He's got some decent takedowns and some submission games. But he can also be beaten on the mat, as we saw Gunnar Nelson do. But Gunnar Nelson in another, bracket when it comes to grapplers. Oliveira at range, he has a lot of success with a long jab. He throws a lot of front kicks. Did this very effectively against Max Griffin. And every time Griffin came in, he was countering him. So he was keeping him at range, making him pay there. Coming forward, going to make you pay there. He was throwing some nice low kicks to chew up Griffin's lead leg, which really slowed his ability to move forward down. He had some trouble with the takedowns early, which is an area that Sobotta will need to exploit. Get on top and do not relinquish that position from once you're there. Oliveira is fairly strong, and again, he was really hurting Griffin. Griffin's got some decent cardio, at least prides himself on his cardio, and Oliveira was just beating him up and just diminishing him every time they exchanged. Every time he cracked him, we just saw Griffin's power bar go down a little bit more. Sobotta cannot afford to sit on the outside here and get chewed up, and I think that's one of his biggest mistakes. He's been out of action for a long time, which is a little bit concerning. As I said, he's also 1-3 when fighting outside of Germany, which is where he's from. He's actually a Polish German, I believe, but nonetheless, 1-3 fighting outside of his home nation. I'd say he needs to land takedowns and probably one per round with prolonged top control. It's not easy to do so against Oliveira. It's not impossible. And Oliveira will have a wide striking advantage in this fight as far as, impact and just overall aggression. Look for Oliveira to do damage at range where Sobotta tends to sit. Sobotta gets a little bit stuck in that position. Sobotta might have some early success, but the combination of the energy required to get the fight to the ground and the damage he's going to take when he's not on the ground is going to add up. Round 1 will be closer. It'll give away to the Brazilian landing more strikes, doing more damage, and potentially getting on top himself. And ultimately, my prediction is Alex Oliveira to defeat Peter Sobotta by TKO. Fight number 3 features a couple of light heavyweights going head-to-head as the 12-4-1 Paul Bearju Craig takes on the 20-6 Gadzhimurad Antigulov. That is a mouthful, probably said incorrectly, but you know what I'm driving at. We got a pair of even odds at -110 on either side, so they're expecting this fight to really could go either way. I'm not so sure I feel this fight is as close as we anticipate, but hey, we'll see. Craig is coming off a draw against Shogun in a co-main event in Brazil. I think he took the fight on short notice. I forgot to look it up, but that would be a very successful fight to Craig. Easily one of his best performances overall. He's had 9 fights in the UFC, 4 wins, 4 losses in the aforementioned draw. He's an action fighter, so he's very, he's gaining some notoriety and having some good fights. He knows it's going to be win or lose for him. As far as, you get finished or you finish. For Antigulov, he started 2-0 in the UFC, looked like a killer. Back-to-back knockout losses to Jon Kuntalaba and Michael Oleksiejczuk has really put him in a bad spot. Physically, Craig, 6'3", he's 4 inches taller than the Russian. He'll have a massive 6-inch reach advantage, and they are the same age. Now, Craig, all 4 of his UFC wins have come by submission. 11 of his 12 wins overall have come by submission. He submitted Vinicius Mojeda, which is very impressive. He submitted Ankalaev, a very impressive Hail Mary submission. Very solid wins. He has 10 wins inside the first half of fights, but he also has 2 of UFC wins in the final minute of round 3. So he shows he carries his danger deep into fights. If you are not minding your P's and Q's, he can put you away. And as we saw with Ankalaev, you can beat him pillar to post and still not come away with a victory. On the flip side, Craig, 3 losses by knockout, 1 by submission, the aforementioned Jimmy Crute. Craig can be hurt, can be damaged, especially on the feet. But he's talked about his ability to take damage, outlast his opponent, and come back, and that is very important. He showed good takedown defense against Mojeda, who doesn't have great wrestling. Mojeda eventually pulled guard, and we saw some pretty solid submission defense out of Craig in that fight, who then turned the tables, hurt him along the cage with some knees, punches, eventually got a rear naked choke, and tapped out a jiu-jitsu black belt. But remember, this is MMA, not jiu-jitsu, not BJJ, so that tells you a little bit where you can exploit things and take advantage of a scenario. You can win that fight despite the fact you might not be ranked as high in a particular discipline. When he fought Shogun, lots of clinch fighting, tends to fight at close range, looking for throws and takedowns. Shogun had some success from top position with some ground and pound, held him down, advanced in rounds 2 and 3. That's why we ended up with a draw. It was kind of one of those grinding fights where nobody really pulled away in either scenario. From distance, we've seen a bit of an improved jab from Craig. He likes working in kicks, which really helps him. His volume's not horrible. Now for Antigulov. In his first 2 fights, 2 takedowns, 2 submissions. He has 15 wins by submission overall, 2 losses by submission very early in his career. He's 4-4 and fights ended by knockout, gone to the distance just 1. He has 1 3-round fight, 2 2-round fights, and 23 fights that have ended in the first round. 18-6 in that. He's 3-0 outside the first round, but he's a guy who's a first-round fighter. Comes from a freestyle wrestling background, super aggressive, likes to grab that single leg, work the takedown, immediately start smashing through an opponent's guard, looking for ground and pound, and work towards that position where he can set up a submission. When he fought Ion Cutelaba, I had Cutelaba to win that fight. He had a good level change, caught a kick, took advantage of his aggressiveness and just good timing overall. He got Cutelaba on the floor, chained together some other takedowns, and kept pressing. But there was a lot of clinch fighting in that matchup. Cutelaba started landing some knees, some elbows, and created some separation, did some damage, and Antigulov started to get tired. He was still landing takedowns, but he was getting sloppy, and he had a difficult time holding him down, and before the first round was out, despite him dictating the pace, he was exhausted and finished along the cage, and that wasn't a good look for him. Against Michael Oleksiejczuk, he just rushed in willy-nilly. Anytime you can use willy-nilly in a prediction, do so. And got countered, dropped several times, and eventually knocked out. Just no concern for defense. I don't like that. In this fight, Antigulov was going to have to deal with the reach of Craig. Not a great striker, but still can do damage and when he's closing that distance. But Craig is very good at defending on the mat. And in fact, he's going to welcome the ground exchanges. I think he survived with Ankalaev for 3 rounds, 15 minutes. If Antigulov gets a top position, he's going to be super aggressive. And Craig is pretty crafty. If Antigulov can overwhelm him right away and catch him really off guard, all the power to him. But if Craig can be defensive, be smart, defend the position, neutralize it, make him work hard, look for him to defend early, and then start taking over that fight when Antigulov tires, into round 2 and into round 3. And as Antigulov tires and can't get him out of there, you're going to see Craig start to either catch him because he's simply exhausted or he's too aggressive and gets sloppy. And my prediction is Paul Craig to defeat, and let's see if I can get this right again, Gadzhimurad Antigulov by submission. Our next action is the women's strawweight division for a marquee matchup as the 12-0-2 Marina Rodriguez takes on the former champion, the 16-6 Carla Esparza. Currently, Rodriguez is a favorite at -170. Carla, the underdog, at +140. Now, again, this fight was actually scheduled to transpire earlier in this Fight Island saga. The fight was booked for July 15th. Rodriguez, cornerman, tested positive for COVID, so they bumped to this event to get the all clear and away they go. Now, Carla Esparza has found a lot of success of late. She's won 3 in a row, including wins over Alexa Grasso and Michelle Waterson, 2 pretty good fighters in their own right. She had a tough loss against Claudia Gadelha, and she's gone 6-3 prior to that, and she's gone 6-3 overall since dropping the title. So she certainly hasn't been the train wreck that it appeared she might have been when she gave up the title and got dominated so badly. For Rodriguez, undefeated in the UFC, but just 2 victories in 4 fights. She has 2 draws, which is shocking, against Randa Marcos and Cynthia Calvillo. 2 very good fights, 2 very good fighters. Calvillo missed weight in that matchup by 5 pounds. Her wins over Tisha Torres and Jessica Aguilar, not exactly great fights. Torres looked good in her last matchup, but they're veterans who are definitely on the downward trend, I'd say, of their career. Maybe Torres can turn it around, but either way. They have a common opponent, both Calvillo. Carla beat her. Obviously, Rodriguez took her to a draw. And Marcos beat Esparza. Rodriguez took her to a draw. So it doesn't really tell us too much. It's not like that MMA math. And, of course, with their style comparisons, it's hard to match them up with those opponents and think we get any kind of really inside edge. Physically, Rodriguez 5 inches taller, so have a 2-inch reach advantage, and they are the same age. Those big physical advantages for Marina. Now, she is a potential title challenger, and with a win here, she is right in the mix. Maybe not for a shot, but that next fight will be massive for her if she wins this matchup. Esparza is a former champion. She's been to the top. She struggled a little bit after dropping the title, but she's kind of getting her chance to get back in the mix. A win here, and with her name notoriety, she is certainly on the cusp of another opportunity. She'd need another big win or even 2, but yeah, she's not too far away. Now, there's really 2 definitive ways this fight plays out, which will dictate who wins. For Esparza, she uses her wrestling to ground Rodriguez and control her. For Rodriguez, she uses her striking and reach to pick Esparza apart, or we get a mix of the 2. Doesn't really tell you anything, but you know where we want to see this fight. Both these girls want to see this fight play out. Rodriguez in her 2 draws. Again, Marcos landed 2 of 5 takedown attempts. Calvillo landed 3 of 4. So that tells you those grapplers were looking to put her on the ground and ground her, and they couldn't do it enough to get a victory. So that's kind of a win in their own right. And as I said, Calvillo missed weight by 5 pounds. So she came in pretty heavy. She's since gone up a division. Rodriguez is a self-admitted slow starter, which is a bit of a concern. 3 of her 5 takedowns over those 2 fights were given up in the first round. So that it tells you, she takes a little bit to get going. She cannot afford to get behind Esparza and let her get confidence. Against Calvillo, she did a nice job getting an underhook once getting taken down and got back up. Calvillo had more success in her second takedown attempt, but overall, Rodriguez is pretty good at getting back up and defending them. She throws beautiful strikes, good straight combinations. She throws some nice kicks at distance. Her knees and elbows in the clinch are very effective, and she's good at turning her opponents in the clinch to really alleviate some of their pressure. And then she puts on good pressure, and whether she's all the way in or all the way out, she's very effective. When Carla Esparza fought a striking-based Alexa Grasso, she threw 11 takedown attempts at her, landed 4 of them. She lost the striking totals 45 to 44, so it was close. Edged out the win. Against Watterson, she landed 1 of 10 takedowns. It was a very close fight. She kind of had some success later with her striking. She won the striking battle 45-44, so oddly enough, and again, edged out a victory. Esparza tends to fight from way out and then push forward into range, either looking to strike in short bursts or look for that takedown. Against Watterson, especially in the first round, it seemed like Carla was stuck on the outside, which really hurt her performance. It wasn't until she got in and started mixing it up that she found some success. Against Alexa Grasso, she had a lot of success shooting from way out, kind of bowled her over, held top position for a bit, but she was having trouble with the strength of Grasso in the clinch. That was, a tough position for her. Esparza, I think, really needs a dominant wrestling performance here. Needs prolonged top control and to avoid getting stuffed. If she's forced to be on the feet, she's going to get torn up at distance. For Rodriguez, she needs to get back up and attack, and she has the ability to do more damage on the feet than Esparza can do on the mat, if she can limit the amount of time Esparza is on top. Esparza is not going to pound the crap out of her, I don't think, over 5 minutes. But if it's an even split, if half the round's on the feet and half the round's on the ground, you got to favor Rodriguez with what the damage she can do. I would look at this and say, unless Esparza can get 2 rounds in the books with 3+ minutes of dominant top control, she's not going to be able to score enough points here. I think Rodriguez overall is going to defend the takedowns, maybe give up 1 or 2, but defend the takedowns. She's going to really bully Carla around in the clinch, land those big strikes at range, bust her up, and kind of have Esparza looking a little bit ragged near the end of the fight. And my prediction is Marina Rodriguez to defeat Carla Esparza by decision. I almost said co-main event, but we're not there yet. For this matchup, it could be a co-main event. Nonetheless, we're in the heavyweight division as the former heavyweight champion, the 23-9-1 Fabricio Werdum, returns to action to take on the former multi-time light heavyweight title challenger turned heavyweight Alexander the Mauler Gustafsson, 18-6-0. The odds on this matchup see Gustafsson as a massive -350 favorite. The turnaround of the former champion Werdum +275. Interesting. Werdum returned after nearly 2 years away and lost a split decision against Alexei Oleinik. I had Werdum in that fight. I thought he fought poorly. I thought Oleinik deserved the fight. He did not look good, as I said, and that was just 2 months ago. For Gus, he's been out of action for 13 months. Lost back-to-back fights. The poor performance against John Jones where he lost his title fight, which kind of was a letdown considering how well he did against him the first time. Then he fights in a main event at home against Anthony Smith. Looks good, then gets finished just out of nowhere, just down and submitted, and then retired. He's admitted it was an emotional retirement. He made a snap decision. He's kind of got the desire to fight back. He's only 33 and now very young in the heavyweight division, so he's coming back at heavyweight. Gus, 6'5". He's 1 inch taller than Werdum. He'll have a 2 inch reach advantage, so he's not a small man by any stretch of the imagination. Werdum should come in around 230 pounds. I would think Gus will be somewhere similar in that I would say he could be anywhere as low as 230. I wouldn't be shocked to see him be at around 245, 240 in that range. We'll see. It might take him a couple fights to bulk up, and Gus is the younger man by 10 years. Now, there is an itty-bitty bit of history between these two fighters. They've sparred before. They've worked together. Initially, Werdum claimed that he won the sparring sessions. Gus says he didn't win. I broke his nose, and the guy wanted to stop sparring with me. They seem to be on good terms, but at the same time, it's like, hey, they do know each other. This isn't a brand new spanking in the cage, first time ever scenario for these guys. Now, Gus needed this switch. This is a great thing for Gus. He was awesome at light heavyweight, but he could not get over the hump. Those big losses to Johnny Jones, to Anthony Rumble Johnson, to DC, and then Smith at home really pegged him as a fighter who just couldn't get that big win. Had some great fights, had some great victories. That win over Glover Teixeira was very impressive. Had some amazing performances, just could not get the big win, could not get the strap. Now the guy's 33 years old, which is young for the heavyweight division. He is big at 6'5". He's not draining himself. He has openly said he's able to train better. He feels stronger. He's still as fast, or at least fast for the heavyweight division. That presents a lot of problems for guys in this division. And then when you figure in with his name history, the history he's had in the promotion, and that overall look, If he wins against a former champion, puts together 2 or 3 more wins, the guy is in the hunt. He's right there. He's on the cusp of another opportunity to fight for UFC gold. Now, for Fabricio Werdum, he was suspended. He asked for his release. He looked out of shape in his last fight. He struggled against an older fighter who primarily used, Oleinyk's a grappler who can throw bombs, but not a great striker, and Oleinik outworked Werdum for a large portion of the fight on the feet. At his best, Werdum offered very sharp Muay Thai with power, good pace, and that dangerous grappling game he could fall back on, and we saw very faint shades of that scenario in his last fight. Maybe he intended to try and wear Oleinik out, and it just didn't go, and then take over. It just didn't go quick enough, and he got behind, couldn't catch up. That's kind of maybe what it seemed like. Maybe it wasn't. You have to wonder, though. Was the layoff and the disinterest after losing the title fight, did that figure into his rough performance? Is it his age? Will he be better this time around? Is it even possible to fix that in 2 months? I don't know. Now, for Gus, at his best, he offers good takedown defense, good cardio, good speed, good movement, overall solid kickboxing and power. So that's what he's looking to bring to this cage. And we can't say. He looked a little, torn at light heavyweight, but this should be a rebirth for him, you'd think. So how does Fabricio Werdum win this fight? I think there's 2 ways. He hits very hard, and at heavyweight, Gus might not be expecting the weight. He's been hit by Rumble Johnson, and that didn't go so well. He's been hit by some big hitters, but Werdum's a big man, and if he hits Gus and Gus ain't ready for it, we could see Gus go down. Or there's that scenario where Werdum comes in, scores an early takedown, they're dry, and he just goes to work while he's fresh and gets a submission, or even maybe gets a couple takedowns and wins a 3-round fight. But you have to wonder, does he have the speed and or the cardio to do so? What is his window for success? It seems limited. If Gus doesn't tire, it's even more limited. How does Gus win this fight? He needs to defend those takedowns. Werdum will look for takedowns in this matchup if he doesn't get knocked out cold in the first couple of seconds. It's either going to be his initial plan, takedowns, top control, or it's going to be, holy shit, the striking's not going well, I'm looking for takedowns. So it's going to happen. Then once that's established, he needs to stay mobile, land, get out. He does that thing where he likes to run away. That could be effective here. Land strikes, run the fuck away, reset, and re-engage. Don't get into a firefight at close range with Werdum where he can land a big strike, where he can take you down. Pick him apart. I'd say overall, Gus is in a better spot here. He's just starting over and taking on a former champion with a chance to really establish himself in a new division. Werdum is at the nearly close to the end of his career, you'd think. He's looking at a long uphill battle to get back into the title picture, and he's facing a guy who essentially has never fought in the division before and knows even with a win here, while it would be a big win, it's not going to move him that much closer to a shot at the title, even if he wants that, and there's talk that he's going to be done when his contract's up. I'd say Gus is more motivated. I'd say he defends the early takedowns. He hurts Fabricio during the exchanges. Outworks him in rounds 2 and 3 for sure if it goes that far. And I think Werdum holds on. My prediction is Alexander Gustafsson to defeat Fabricio Werdum by decision. Now we move to the co-main event of the evening. For that, we're in the UFC's light heavyweight division for a trilogy fight between the former UFC light heavyweight champion, the 26-11-1 Mauricio Shogun Rua, taking on longtime rival, fellow Brazilian, 23-9-0 Antonio Rogerio Nogueira, Little Nog as he is known. Currently, Shogun, who's 2-0 in the series, is a minus 188 favorite, plus 162 for Little Nog on the turnaround. Now, this is a trilogy fight, as I said, with Shogun up 2-0. Shogun's won both fights by decision, 2005 in Pride, and then in 2015 UFC 190. It's also a retirement fight in Nogueira. He said this is going to be it for him. Shogun comes into this matchup 4-1-1 in his last 6 fights. He's got a win over Little Nog. He beat Corey Anderson, Jean Vellante, Tyson Pedro, and he had that draw with Paul Craig that we talked about earlier in the show. Not a bad run. It's taken a little bit of time to get here. It doesn't exactly happen 2-3 fights in a year, but hey, for Nogueira, over his last 10 fights, he's 4-6. As I said, this is his last fight, as he said. He has a knockout loss to Spann against Bader. Rumble took him out. Rumble's knocked everybody out this side of Tennessee. 2 fights since 2016, though, so not very active. Nogueira 1 inch taller, Shogun 1 inch reach advantage, and Shogun is the younger man by 5 years. Now, in their second fight, Nogueira landed more strikes, 63-53, but Shogun landed a couple of takedowns, which were very crucial. It was a close fight. Shogun came up pressing early. Nog was stuck on the outside. Shogun using those kicks and then flurrying. Nog relying primarily on his boxing with a very limited kicking attack, which has kind of been his MO for most of his career. He had some issues with the range, and Shogun again blasting with body kicks, but Nog hurt Shogun in round 1, and had him backed up, had him in some serious trouble, won the round. Shogun came out in round 2, none of that shit, grabbed a single leg, put him on the mat, and kind of kept him there. It landed another takedown late in round 3 to kind of help him seal a very close fight. Nog kind of went for a guillotine as well in that round, which helped Shogun get in that position. But Shogun kind of had his success in rounds 2 and 3 after Nog had a very good success in round 1. Shogun had a couple of takedowns. He was a little busier in the final 2 rounds. Round 1 could have been a 10-8 in the new system. I believe it wasn't the new system back then. We could have been looking at a draw. So it wasn't a walk away for either fighter. So since that fight, Nogueira has struggled significantly, and Shogun has remained relatively successful, as I said, with limited activity on both sides. And Nogueira is 44, which is really pushing it. Shogun's 38. He's got a few more fights, 38 to 22. Since 2010, Shogun's fought 16 times. Nogueira's fought 11. So Nogueira's just been kind of taking that slow grind at the end of his career. Nog's hands could be trouble for Shogun, like they were in the last fight. But that being said, he's slower. He's less able to get into range and land without taking damage, without his opponent circling out and just being defensive. He stopped a couple of opponents, and Sam Alvey and Patrick Cummins, who are guys that Alvey's a counter striker, so he wants you to punch, and Nog caught him. Cummins is just a garbage striker, unfortunately. Take nothing away from his grappling, but he's just not a very good striker. And their chins are a bit of a vulnerable position, and Nog capitalized. Shogun's chin's not great, and we've seen that. But Shogun has demonstrated he can fight deeper into matches. He's gone 3 rounds in 5 of his last 6 fights with 4 wins and a draw, so that shows you can go deep into matchups. Nog has not won a 3-round fight since 2013 against Rashad Evans. Again, Shogun needs to use his kicks here, keep Nog in the outside, slow him down with low-end body kicks. Once Nog closes the distance, Shogun needs to change levels, use that takedown. Nog seems pretty vulnerable, especially if you get him off balance, put him on his back. Even with his jiu-jitsu, Shogun should be able to neutralize him from top position. Nog has as a retirement fight, could lead to some encouragement, could rise to the occasion, score that knockout, ride off into the sun. But he's fighting away from home for the first time since 2014. Those last 5 fights have been in Brazil. This fight was scheduled to be in Brazil and has been moved here. That might be tough on him. The travel and just the unfamiliar environment might be a little bit difficult for him. Might hurt his motivation. Without the crowd there to motivate him as well in Brazil, that could be tough. Shogun still seems to be a little more competitive. He seems to have the tools beyond a puncher's chance, which I think is what Nogueira is looking at. And I think Shogun gets it done here. My prediction is Shogun Hua to defeat Antonio Rogerio Nogueira by TKO. And now, fight number 7 on the main card. We're finally at the main event of the evening. Thank you for sticking with me. It's going to be a heck of a long show. We are in the UFC's middleweight division as the former champion Robert Whittaker returns to action, coming in with a very impressive record of 20 wins, 5 losses, and no draws, taking on the equally as impressive 18-2-1 Darren Till, former welterweight title challenger. Currently the former champion, Whittaker, the Reaper, -125 as the favorite, +100 even money for Darren Till as the slight underdog. Now Whittaker's coming off losing his title to the now champion and at the time interim champion Israel Adesanya. It was his first loss since he lost back-to-back fights in 2013 and 2014 as a welterweight. He had won 9 consecutive bouts leading up to that. Darren Till went undefeated for 18 straight fights. He lost against Tyron Woodley for the title. He got smashed by Masvidal, knocked out at home. Really struggled there. But then he went up to Kelvin Gastelum, middleweight, beat Kelvin Gastelum by split decision. We're seeing Kelvin. We just saw Kelvin struggle again. So maybe that takes a little bit of the shine off that victory for Darren Till, but nonetheless, good performance. Both guys, former welterweights, both guys just 6 feet tall, 1-inch reach for Till. Till is the younger man by 2 years. Now, Whittaker is that post-title fight letdown scenario. It doesn't have as much an effect on some fighters as it does others. It might for Whittaker. He had a long layoff for the title fight. He had injuries. He got knocked out definitively by a charismatic champion who seems to be making waves. How does he recover? In fact, you go back, he had back-to-back violent fights against Romero that were very demanding. Then he gets knocked out. That's a lot. Till went through the same thing. Till lost the title, lost to Masvidal, had to make some changes. Robert Whittaker's a killer. He looks great when he's at his best. But one thing, and I don't like discrediting things, but you look at the record, you realize, and I say this with some asterisks, is he's beat a lot of grappler-first guys he's been able to force strike. Romero's allergic to using his own. Yoel Romero's allergic to using his wrestling, but he is a wrestler. He could go that route, and Whittaker beat him on the feet. Jacare's a grappler. Whittaker beat him on the feet. Brunson's a grappler. Whittaker beat him on the feet. Natal, you see it. He faced a guy who's primarily a striker, not a son. He says, yeah, let's throw hands, and he gets knocked out. Till is also a striker. Is he like Israel Adesanya? Absolutely not, but he should be more comfortable. And the Romero fights were close. A lot of people thought Romero won the second one. Now, Till had a solid debut at middleweight against Gastelum, but Gastelum's now lost 3 in a row, so it's not as nearly as big a win as it was. Not in a good place. It was a close fight. That matchup was. When you look at the experience of this matchup, Till went 5 rounds with Wonder Boy. Close fight that a lot of people thought Wonder Boy won. He's had 4 main events, so he's been in the spotlight before. Whittaker went 5 rounds with Romero twice. He's been in 4 main events as well, so no real definitive experience advantage there. When Whittaker fought Adesanya, he was lunging in. He seemed a little unsure of himself. He was missing a lot. He was much wider with his strikes than he traditionally is, and it seemed like he just was unnerved by the opponent he was facing. His left jab was effective at times. He doubled it up. He would bring a power right after. He threw some head kicks at the end of his combinations, but had middling success with his connection rate. He was dropped with a well-timed uppercut at the end of round 1, counter uppercut. He was then KO'd during a flurry where Adesanya was just able to move and throw strikes from angles that Whittaker wasn't able to deal with, and that ended him in round 2. He probably won't have to deal with that level of complexity in Till, but Till is still very dangerous. Whittaker's been knocked down 4 times in his last 2 fights, plus knocked out. He's taken some time off, but that certainly impacts your confidence. You're sitting here striking with the mentality that, hey, I could be stopped at any moment. A mistake could bring this whole fight crashing down. And that's something you have to take into consideration. He has power himself. He explodes into his strikes from the outside. He could opt to look for a wrestling approach against Till, like look sit from the outside and then, boom, change levels for a takedown when Till presses forward. But I don't know if that's what he's looking for here. Whittaker's put up some pretty decent volume numbers that Till has never put up himself, but Darren Till is also quite good at limiting his opponent's striking and making it a defensive grind where he's able to land strikes and keep his opponent on the outside. Darren Till is also a southpaw, something worth looking at here. When he fought Jorge Masvidal, he dropped him with a straight left, and of course the left side strikes from Till are one of his volume primary weapons. He likes to use that right out in front, and I know you can't see me, but really to disrupt his opponent's guard and then fire the left once the right's kind of maybe broken down the guard a little bit. Against Thompson, he was firing multiple right jabs and then moving in. He had some nice low kicks to get into range against Gastelum, which were very effective. He will strike and then close the distance and jam up his opponent with clinch and just control positions, which could be an effective weapon here if he can muscle Whittaker around. Versus Thompson, he traded at distance. He wasn't leaping in nearly as much as he does. He likes to counter and or engage you, but just not press the attack. He had those lead-to-leg attacks, those oblique kicks, which was very effective. And he could look for something here to try and just keep Whittaker from coming forward. Every time Whittaker wants to come forward, just jam him up with those oblique kicks or front kicks or the clinch and just stop him from finding his momentum. Now, Till was knocked out by Masvidal. He's far from a perfect fighter, and Whittaker has the power and the delivery system to replicate those issues. But when you look at the situation, Till capitalized on Gastelum struggling after the Adesanya fight. He is now facing another fighter coming off an even more devastating loss to Israel Adesanya, who's going to have some questions about his confidence. Whittaker hasn't had to rebound from a loss since that aforementioned 2013-2014 split, where he lost a fight, and then he lost another, and then he finally got it back together and went on his run. Till should be more comfortable here at 185 pounds after his debut. He will be more used to what his body feels like. It'll feel more natural to him. I don't like the way Whittaker leaps in and out, especially if he continues that trend of throwing wide strikes. Till's more linear strikes should work for counters, and when they're stuck at range, I think Till's jab and lead leg kicks are going to be effective. Till lands some solid strikes against an unsure Whittaker as the exchanges go. Eventually, he's going to hurt him, catch him as he moves forward, and my prediction is Darren Till to defeat Robert Whittaker by knockout. So those are my 7 main card predictions. There are 15 fights in all on the UFC on ESPN 14 event or UFC Fight Island 3 card. We'll see how many. I gave you the over-under. I said 13.5. We'll see how many fights actually transpire, how many are killed by a weight cut or by a COVID test or some other shenanigans. Either way, it's a hell of a lot of fights. It should be a heck of a lot of fun. Very much looking forward to it. It's my second last fight prediction I'm doing, as a show. 10 years in the business, I'm walking away. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in, as always, whether it was today, yesterday, or 5 years ago. Follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions. And this has been a long show. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hanging in there with me. And check my prelims on my website, kamikazeoverdrive.net. Buy the bet packs, folks. Put me. Let's see if we can go out on a couple winning notes here with the last trio of shows. Thanks, guys. Talk soon. Hi.